SportsNite, your home for all SU sports talk.
Syracuse players, they don't find a player box out. They turn around and try to jump up and grab the ball. That's not rebounding. That's not boxing out. That's lazy.
It is nowhere close to an overreaction to say that they can go 500 or better in ACC play.
I think there's something to be said about that specific phenomenon. 5 guys saying, there's no backup plan. It's just us.
Breaking down everything from around the hill.
When you get doubled up on your shots and even one more to put a cherry on top, there's no possible way you can win a lacrosse game.
You can tell it just dissipates out of nowhere. And it's the in-game adjustments that have hurt Syracuse.
And giving hot takes along the way.
Naheem McLeod, they want him to be Jesse Edwards, and he just isn't.
Fran Brown is a home run hire for Syracuse.
Get your voice heard by calling in at 315-443-2011 or interact with us on social media at WAER Sports Talk. It's Sports Night, and it starts right now.
Friday nights are for Sports Night. That's right, taking you up till 9 o'clock on this cold, windy, rainy Friday night in Syracuse.
Happy May.
Happy May, everybody. It's May. Alongside Adam Gotkin, I'm Andrew Delapiana. If you want to join our conversation tonight, please do so. Call in 315-443-2011 or shoot us a text at 315-556-3929. Breaking down everything that's going on around the hill right now. Little men's lacrosse, little women's lacrosse in action earlier today. And, of course, we got to give some portal updates about men's and women's basketball. But, Adam, let's start with some lacrosse. Let's start on the men's side. A big game on Sunday. Syracuse, they're in the NCAA tournament. They got the 6th seed. They take on Harvard on Sunday. But they had a lot going on this week. 4 guys drafted into the PLL. You look at guys like Sam English. He was taken in the number 3 spot. Him and Carter Rice go team up on the California Redwoods. And also, Owen Hiltz goes in the first round as well to the Carolina Chaos. Michael Grace also to the New York Atlas in that 3rd round. Plenty of guys coming off the board for the Cuse.
Yeah, it's always fun to see your players get drafted and have the ability to play at the next level. The PLL, of course, still a pretty new league when it comes to professional sports leagues. It's only about 6 or 7 years old at this point, but it's exciting for these guys, and it does mean a little bit of something for recruiting to be able to prove to incoming recruits that you're a program that can really develop your guys and churn out professional talent.
And you look at someone like Sam English, who's only been here 2 years. They was mostly developed at Princeton, then he makes his way over to Syracuse. You talk about a two-way guy that has done it all season long for this team that's basically out there the entire 60 minutes. Syracuse has this great thing this year where they keep GPSs in players and they do this whole data tracking thing with all this good stuff. And I can't even imagine the number of miles he runs per game because he is out there every single second of every single game.
It's exceptional. Sam English is, I think, the most unique player in the country. The fact that you can have him on your man-down unit and your first-line offensive midi, it's unbelievable just how versatile he is. And for Sam English at the next level, I think that's going to make him a superstar in the PLL. Professional lacrosse is different from college lacrosse. You have the 2-point line. You have a much shorter field. It's not necessarily as drawn out and tactical of a game. It's more of a just fire game. And English, with how fast he is and the fact that he's able to go down the field and not gonna have to come off, he can be a difference maker at the next level.
And a big part that we don't want to forget is that the PLL, unlike the NBA or the NHL, taking the 4 years or the 5 years to develop guys into now playing professional lacrosse is a massive aspect of it, where guys, they take a long time to learn a system, get developed in the roots of college lacrosse, so that when you make the jump to the PLL, you feel like you're in a good spot once you get there.
To a sense. I mean, it's a different sport almost. It's not as much of a jump as it is from box to field lacrosse, but it's not your traditional field lacrosse because from age really 7 until you graduate high school, you're only ever playing one style.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's different with 6s, but you're only ever playing outdoor lacrosse one way, which was, however long the field is. But you have your restraining lines, you have all these rules, and now you go to the PLL and it's completely different rules. And some guys who you think are going to be great don't end up even going to the PLL. Pat Spencer right now is tearing things up in the NBA playoffs. Your first overall pick, your first ever number 1 overall pick in that league, never even plays in the league. So it's different, but it's still cool to see these guys make it to the next level. And for some of these players specifically, I think that they can have a lot of success at the next level. Again, we've been saying English. I think that Owen Hiltz can be a very good professional player. Man, I think Michael Grace can be a very good professional player, and he can be a guy who plays professional for a long time. Don't forget this. Sam English and Michael Grace, the number 2 and number 3 overall picks in the NLL draft, the Box Lacrosse League, which is in a lot of places of the country and in Canada bigger than the PLL. So, this is a Syracuse class that's small, but a graduating class that could be playing lacrosse for a while.
Do you think the PLL is going to move to a system where I should say the NCAA moves to more of a system that the PLL has?
Oh, never.
You don't think so?
No. So the college lacrosse will never change its rules. The PLL changed its rules to make it more exciting and engaging, and then continues to evolve to try and get Olympic lacrosse to be a thing. It's all about Paul Rabel.
Of course.
It's all about Paul Rabel. He's the guy. He's the mastermind behind everything. By the way, so excited for his new show that's coming out. Have you seen this?
No.
No?
On ESPN Plus?
Paul's Places on ESPN Plus or ESPN2?
Is it like Peyton's Places?
Yeah, Gary Gates in it. Trey Deer is in it. It is Peyton's Places, basically.
Okay.
It's produced by Peyton Manning, like the Omaha production company or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's the same type of thing. And there's an episode about where he goes with, it's Trey Deer and the Onondaga Nation. And there's an episode where he goes to Maryland and learns about the roots there. And yeah, there's a Gary Gate episode. It's going to be really cool. But no, Paul Rabel has completely changed the game of lacrosse at the PLL. The MLL used to be similar but different. There was still the 2-point line, but it was same length field. Now the field is even shorter. But yeah, I completely just lost my train of thought there. But Rabel, cool. PLL, cool. I like how they're doing things, but college will never transition to what the PLL is. Well, I think that's an encapsulation of that thought.
Well, speaking of that, USA Lacrosse released its All-Americans earlier this week as well. A couple of no surprise, but maybe some that surprised me as well. Sam English, of course, makes that first team. Spallina, Michael Leo, Johnny Mullen, second team. Owen Hiltz on that third team, and then some honorable mentions with Billy Juan and Jimmy McCool. A little bit of surprise that Joey Spallina did make that first team. I'm really surprised, Adam, that Michael Grace was not getting any recognition from either the honorable mention or making an All-American team. I really think he's been better as a defender than Billy Juan this season.
I really agree with you in general that the defense was overlooked.
Yeah.
Because I think that the defense for the Syracuse team is, without a doubt, the best part of the team this year.
And their offense has been extremely inconsistent.
The offense is what gets all of the attention. Everyone talks about Spallina and how they play so fast and so exciting. But you think about some of the losses. You have Maryland where they scored 7 goals. Duke where you scored only 7 goals. Like, those are games where the offense never showed up. The defense, other than really the Cornell game, always kept Syracuse in it. And yet, Billy Juan's the only guy who gets on there. I guess Jimmy McCool too, but both of them are honorable mentions.
Yeah.
To me, that was a shock.
Yeah, Jimmy McCool just won the ACC Goal of the Year, the tournament MVP. He just had 20 saves against Notre Dame. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't think they're going to go in terms of the recency bias, but Jimmy McCool has been one of the most consistent goalies all season long in the country. You look at his last 5 games, he's had a 50 save percentage or higher, someone that is playing his best lacrosse at the moment right now. Now, again, you look at what he's done the last couple of games, you don't want to look at that as the entire season. But, and we can even get to this in a little bit, the way he has bounced back from that Harvard game early this year, we had a save percentage of 33. The guy was benched in the third quarter. Look at the turnaround he's had from that point. I really think he was more of a guy that deserved a spot on that third team and not just a regular old honorable mention.
Yeah, because, I mean, the honorable mentions in this list, it's a joke, if I'm being completely honest. To be fair, or not to be fair, to be honest, the entire All-American list is a joke because per team, you have 4 attackmen and 4 long sticks.
Really?
You should have 3. I mean, this is lacrosse. You should have 3 attackmen, 3
They should
midfielders,
have an entire lineup,
3 defense.
is what
It should
you're
be like a
saying.
team is.
Yeah.
But there are 13 goalies who made the All-American list of like 70 teams.
How does that make any sense?
So
there's 70. What is there? 72 Division I teams or something like that.
So
74?
there's 13 of those teams had a goalie that's an All-American. Your other positions, I think that we can look at and say, these are some of your top guys. The honorable mention's not that much just because there's so many of them. But yeah, this whole list I have some issues with. I was kind of surprised to see Michael Leo be a second-team All-American. You know, I think he's had a good season.
Solid, but he wasn't like.
I think for us in Syracuse, he was a little bit disappointing because we were expecting.
I think Owen Hiltz was better than him.
Yeah, exactly. We were expecting that next step from Leo this year, and it didn't really come at all. And he was kind of a very similar player that he was last year. Uptick in assists for Leo, but for him to go from an honorable mention last year to now a second-team All-American, I didn't really feel that same boost in production. Owen Hiltz, like you said, I thought maybe deserved to get that boost instead of Leo. Of course, there are different positions, but still.
Yeah, let's turn the page to Harvard coming up on Sunday. Should be a really good one between the Orange and the Crimson. That one being a 5 o'clock start here on WAER. Our coverage gets going at 4:30 with McClure Remodeling Countdown to face-off. We want to hear your pregame thoughts before SU and Harvard and a huge rematch. Call in 315-443-2011. Text us at 315-556-3929. Adam Gockin, Andrew Del Piano here on SportsNite, taking you up until 9 o'clock. And how about a recap of the ACC Championship first, where Billy Juan, who, again, like we just said, has had some conversations about, said this game is very simple. Let's hear what he had to say after winning the ACC Championship.
He always said that the teams that were best, that were successful, just had the most fun, and going back to what it was like playing backyard lacrosse as a kid, acting like you were a team like Syracuse playing, obviously last weekend Notre Dame and Duke in the ACC tournament, and he's like, where else would you rather be? So I think for this team, just playing fun, playing loose, and just knowing the difference between playing loose and, slacking off. And so for us, it's like the little things are obviously just playing loose.
I mean, I really felt like they did that this weekend. Michael Grace, a guy who's been there, he's done that. He's won 2 national championships at RIT. You bring over that kind of caliber to your team, it translates on the field.
Yeah, and I love the energy, and I love the idea of let's go out there and let's have fun. There was the clip of Jimmy McCool in the huddle that kind of went a little bit viral in the social media world of during a timeout, him asking all the defenders, hey guys, we having fun yet? And I love it. I love that with this team. I think that in this sport especially, you need to be loose and you need to be having fun because, that's what the sport of lacrosse is built upon, is creativity and flashiness. And if you're all uptight, none of that happens. And especially we think of this Syracuse team of when it's playing its best, it's like magic to watch. And if you're uptight, you lose that creativity. So I love this mentality.
I really think we saw that on full display during that 3-game losing streak where they looked uncomfortable on offense. Yeah. They looked like they couldn't get anything going to put the ball in the back of the net. And really a complete 360 over the weekend, what we saw in Notre Dame and Duke, where you're playing free. Everything just seems to come a little bit more naturally, and I think that's really where the success for the Syracuse offense comes. Even look at that Harvard game, as we'll dive into in a second. You lead that game 5-0. You let that game get away from you. Maybe it has to do with something of Syracuse has to get back to that mentality of loosening up a little bit. Yeah, put the pressure on the other team early, but still put them away at the same time.
Yeah, it's the themes that we've been talking about all year long with this team. And offensively, it's that they go these moments where it just all seems to kind of fall apart. And so with that, the mentality of playing loose, you have to make sure that the looseness doesn't turn into this possession doesn't really matter if we turn it over.
Yeah, laziness.
It can't turn into that at any point. You can't get the, doesn't really matter. I don't care about this play because there's so many others. Like, I'll just throw it behind the back just because we're having fun here. So you have to find that balance. And I think that they have. And I give a lot of credit to Gary Gate, Pat March, John O'Dearna, and the coaching staff for really helping harness it. And then give credit to Michael Grace and the leaders on this team for really kind of embracing it and showing the team that this is what you have to do to win, of keeping your composure and never getting comfortable, but still having fun. And it's a hard thing to do because it's such a mental game, but it feels like they're starting to figure it out.
One of those leaders, Sam English, spoke earlier today about what happened that last time against Harvard. Take a listen.
I think just being present at all times. I think we went up big in the first quarter and kind of took our foot off the gas, and then we were in a game, and it didn't turn out well for us at the end. So I think just playing full 60 minutes, being present and being ready at all times and having fun the whole way, it will be our key to success, hopefully, on Sunday.
Yeah, 5-0 lead in the first quarter for Syracuse. You watched that game. Oh, they might win 15-2 against a team that at the time looked like they were back to a national championship caliber. This was number 6 Syracuse at the time versus number 15 Harvard. And then Sam King happens for the Crimson, and you're saying, what has happened to the Syracuse team? Where's the confidence gone that was in that first quarter that potentially led them to a longer run later in the season?
Yeah, that was a really crazy game, and that's a perfect point in that game, especially of like, where they just lose concentration. And you said it at the start of that game. I mean, it felt like they were going to blow them out.
Yeah.
You go up 5-0 early. I was calling that game for ACC Network Extra with Stephen Rafis, of course, former All-American, Tewaaraton watch list member. And I remember at the first TV timeout, it was 5-1 Syracuse. And I asked him, I was like, is there any chance that you think Harvard comes back in this game? Like, Syracuse looks so much better. And he was like, yes, they do, but you got to keep going because it's only 5-1. And I think that, by the time that first quarter over, it was 6-3, and we start to see that Harvard offense come to life, and those things that plague Syracuse that we've seen over now the past couple of years just continue to get worse and worse, and the offense just fell apart, and they started to turn it over, and it went from so great, and you were thinking, there's no way they lose this, to everything that you just thought couldn't go wrong went wrong, and they lost.
An absolute panic of a ball game, and especially with the point two, Adam. Johnny Mullen winning 28 of 31 faceoffs in that game.
32. Close.
Sorry, 28 of 32.
But still, that's one of the best performances I've ever seen in a game, and you
what
lose.
What is that over? That has to be over 90%. What, 91, something like that?
I can't do math, man. I can't.
No,
I don't know.
I'll keep that in my back pocket. Don't worry about it. But still, to lose that game by dominating that much of a differential,
it's
unbelievable. You just got to throw your hands up and say, what are you doing?
Yeah, and it's really proof that you can win a game without winning faceoffs. I really didn't think it was possible. It was, one of the biggest storylines going into the game. I remember when we talked to Jerry Byrne, Harvard's head coach, I straight up asked him, I said, faceoffs haven't been good for you. Is it possible to win this game if the faceoffs don't go your way, which, all things considered, they probably won't? And he said yes, which I thought, what do you mean there's a way you can win without winning faceoffs? I had the same conversation the year prior with Matt Carwick, Colgate's coach, and we saw Syracuse dominate faceoffs and dominate the game. So I thought there's no way you need to win faceoffs. But they proved that if you can win the other parts of the game, then faceoffs, they don't really matter. And the big one with that is turnovers.
It was huge.
If you can force the other team to turn it over, you don't really need to win faceoffs because you're just winning the ball that way. And for Syracuse, turn the ball over just 15 times in the game, yes, but 7 times in the third quarter. You can't ever turn a ball over 7 times in a quarter, and then 4 times in the fourth, which was more than Harvard did in the fourth. And you gave up the game. And again, Syracuse in that first matchup just played so bad for how good they started and how good John Mullen was, and it was just shocking. It's still just one of the more fascinating games of the year in college lacrosse, to be honest.
What was the biggest turning point in that game for you guys at home? Call in 315-443-2011 or text us at 315-556-3929. Andrew Del Piana, Adam Gawkin here on Sports Night, taking you up till 9 o'clock on this Friday night. I really think, Adam, the downfall in that game started with the play of Jimmy McCool. 10 goals allowed on 15 shots, 33 save percentage. By far one of his worst games of the season. I really looked at it as a turning point for him, but still looking at that game in hindsight and saying, this is one of the better goalies in the country. Not at that point in the season maybe, but if you want to be the guy to replace Will Mark and you can't make plays against a Harvard team that, has one of the better offenses in the country, you might not just be the guy. And I think questions really arose from that. He has turned the page, but at that time, it was really confusing at the time for Jimmy McCool.
Yeah, he got pulled about 5 minutes into the second half.
Yeah.
Michael Ippoliti comes in and looks pretty good. And on the other side, I think the thing that kind of made it so interesting in this game with the goalie matchup is you had a true freshman, Graham Stevens, in his first ever actual important lacrosse game,
Yeah.
big game, because he's a true freshman. This was
5-star,
just their third game, 5-star. Like this was the guy, and Jimmy McCool's getting completely outplayed by him. But yeah, the fact that he has turned the page since then is so important, and I think that McCool has now extra motivation to go into this game and play a lot better, because everyone knows how disappointed he was in himself in that. No one has higher standards for Jimmy McCool than Jimmy McCool. So I think that there's a lot of motivation for him. I think that there's a lot of motivation for this defense too. We were just talking about earlier during the PLL draft and with Michael Grace, and during the All-American conversation with the defense not getting the flowers that it deserves. The defense didn't play that well, and they left McCool out to dry, and they got to be better in front of him. Because if they're not, then it's going to be an issue. There's a lot of guys on this Harvard team who can shoot the ball really well. Teddy Malone, Jack Spidell, Logan Ip, John Arndt. These are all players who can really shoot when you give them the opportunity. And Syracuse was giving Harvard chances to shoot with their hands free.
And Sam King, who is a top 5 in the Tewaaraton, maybe a little surprising Joey Spallina wasn't there, but still that's one of the top 5 guys in the country according right now the Tewaaraton Award. Look, this Harvard team, if we took a look at them in a bigger landscape, Coach Byrne has really turned this program around. It's in his 6th year. It's his most wins in a regular season. He does have one of the top offenses in the country, scoring over 14 goals per game. But he did say something very interesting after that game, Adam. He said, Syracuse is back. Syracuse is a Final Four team. I thought at the time, after you just beat them in their building, to say that, and now you face them in the playoffs, that puts him in a little bit of a weird spot because, yes, they have to beat you in order to go back to the Final Four, but you have to prove it again that you are still the better team in that sense.
I mean,
it's a little ironic, isn't it?
I think that that's just like classic coach speak.
You think
coach
so?
speak, and you're being a classic member of the media right now who's trying to kind of spin the words in a way and create a narrative of, Harvard said he's a Final Four team, and now just
he literally said that, so I'm just taking his
words.
words.
But again, I think that's it's coach speak. I don't remember that press conference exactly. I can see our wonderful engineer in the other room, Max Gifford, who I believe was in that press conference. If he
called that
remembers that exactly, was he asked if Syracuse is back, and the answer was yes? Or
I think it was
Max.
right.
Do you have an answer? Do you remember?
I do. Hi, everyone. Max Gifford coming in from the engineering board here in our Ostrom Avenue studios. He did answer that question. He didn't answer a question. He just said Syracuse is back.
Was he asked,
and
is Syracuse back?
I think it was his opening statement, wasn't it?
It was his opening statement
Okay.
saying that Syracuse is back. They're a Final Four team. Personally, I think he said it so that Harvard looks a lot better.
Yeah, then your
come
win
Selection
means
Sunday.
more. I think that's the thing. Like, your win then means more because you just beat a team, and then you say, we just beat a Final Four team. What's he supposed to say? I don't really think Syracuse is back. Like, this is the same.
Well, still, I mean, at the time, they were cruising.
Yeah, but Harvard was the last team into the tournament. That's exactly what I would have said at that time, rather than saying, Syracuse isn't that good of an opponent. We pushed them over after that first quarter.
Most coaches, anyways, are saying, that's a really good team we just played. But to say they're a Final Four team in Game 4 or 5 of the season, like you're trying to make a point.
I think that's
in the early stages.
I think that's him trying to make his win look so much better.
Exactly.
Of course,
like,
it is.
Totally agree.
Like, so what are you? Like, what's the point now? Like, if it was the opposite, then you're saying Syracuse has motivation. Then you're saying, look at this. He doesn't think we're that good of a team. Like Syracuse is saying, okay, he thought we were good. Like, okay.
Yeah, but they still beat him though. Like,
because Harvard's a good team.
Yeah.
I don't understand your point here.
No,
Harvard was also 1-1 at that time. Keep in mind.
I'm still saying Syracuse has something to prove because Harvard beat them. Yet they were still saying Syracuse a Final Four team.
I don't. But Harvard, because Harvard's a good team, and they're a team that is good enough to beat Final Four caliber teams.
I don't know about that. They're the last team in the tournament,
and it's very hard to make
here?
the tournament. They beat a number of very good teams this year. This is a Harvard team that beat Michigan, beat Yale, lost by just 2 to Princeton. Like, this is a good team.
The argument I'm making is that Coach Byrne's saying the Crimson are better than a Final Four team because they beat them.
Well,
so Syracuse
they were better on that day.
He said
he
that
said Syracuse
that's
is back.
He said, because that was a very good team that he beat.
That day.
And he wants to improve his resume for the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, I think you're putting too much into it. I think he thought that Syracuse showed that it's good, and I think he's trying to pad his resume by saying, "Hey, look at this." Like, I think we're spending too much time on something that he said so that he could get posted on the Lacrosse Network.
Oh, it worked
so
because everyone saw it.
You know, by the time Selection Sunday comes around and people think, did Harvard have any good wins this year? Oh yeah, I remember that clip of when he said Syracuse is a Final Four team, and now they're yeah.
It's so talking heads like Andrew Delapiana can latch onto
exactly.
it and have bait to talk
about. The media,
That's my job. Yeah, that's what I like to do. Yeah.
Distort words. And
that's not distorting. He said they're a Final Four team. I'm just taking what he's saying.
Well, if they are, then his team will
having
lose.
Syracuse use it as motivation on Sunday.
If they are a Final Four team, then his team will lose. But I do think it's a good Harvard team. However, let's say it is a good Harvard team.
Absolutely.
There is absolutely no excuse for Syracuse to lose this game. This is a must win. You cannot lose your home first-round game. I'm going to say this about the quarterfinal as well. Must win. You have to make the Final Four. We're talking Final Four bust. Like, if you lose the quarterfinal, okay, it's neutral site. It's, it's
Princeton.
It's to a team that you can make the argument is better than you. I don't care that Harvard beat you. If anything, that means you can't lose to them twice.
Yeah.
Inexcusable. You can't lose. If you lose this first round game, then we're talking hot seat. Because
hot seat.
Yes. Because then it's all
what Gary Gates done in the last 3 years to bring this team back to an ACC.
Then he's made one quarterfinal and didn't deliver in May.
4-10 in 2022.
Yeah, well, he coached. They were never that bad before him. I
think
what
he's done to turn around the team.
He won 2 games in a pretty mid ACC in which Syracuse is the 6th seed, is the highest ranked team. You have to prove that you can then win in May and make it deep in the this program is a Final Four program. This isn't a program that you're happy with. You win the ACC championship and lose in the first round. No, you're not. There's no banners up for ACC titles. It's all about national championships. You have to make the Final Four because the bigger point is you have to at least make it once with Spallina. If this 4 years ends of Joey Spallina without a Final Four, it's over.
Yeah.
So the more of hot seat is if you lose in the first round, then you got one more year with this group where all you've done is make it to one quarterfinal, miss a tournament, and lose in the first round. Then it gets scary. That's what this is. You have to win this game.
Yeah. Fun little stat we'll bring in tomorrow as we close on Sunday. Last team to beat Syracuse at home twice in one season, 1918, the Onondaga Nation. We'll close out that.
It's been a while.
You'll hear it again on Sunday from Max Gifford. I know he's been waiting his book to bring that out. All right, we'll take a quick break here on SportsNite, but when we come back, women's lacrosse, they took down Brown in the first round of the NCAA tournament. We'll break down that victory over the Bears when we come back here on SportsNite.
For the next Putumayo World Music Hour,
we'll explore the eclectic music of today's Italy, from the lively folk traditions of the countryside to the sophisticated studio-created grooves of the club scene. I'm Dan Storper.
And I'm Rosalie Howarth. Join us for Spotlight on Italy, the next Putumayo World Music Hour.
Sunday night at 11 on WAER.
I'm Jesse Thorne. Bob Mackey joins me on Bullseye this week. The legendary costume designer worked with Elton John on some of his most striking and cumbersome get-ups.
He couldn't do the pedals on the piano because he had, flippers that you swim in.
Plus, rapper turned memoirist Gene Gray. That's on the next Bullseye from MaximumFun.org and NPR.
Sunday morning at 11 on WAER.
There is a one-stop listen for everything Syracuse athletics.
You got great talent on this offense. Like, you can't go dormant for an entire quarter. And
the Ostrom Avenue podcast provides unique opinions, plus exciting interviews from industry experts.
Joined by Georgia Tech play-by-play broadcaster Andy Demetra, Syracuse.com, football beat reporter Emily Laker.
Check out weekly interviews on YouTube and listen at waer.org or wherever you get your podcast.
Welcome back into SportsNite here on WAER. Adam Gotkin and Andrew Delapiana with you up until 9 p.m. So we've got 30 minutes left with you all on this dreary May night here in upstate New York. Usually, this time of year, it's warm out, and that's what makes playoff lacrosse so special. Today it wasn't, but we still had some pretty fun playoff lacrosse, Andrew, as Syracuse women's lacrosse won its first round game down in New Haven, Connecticut against Brown 15-9 at home. How excited are you about Kayla Trainer's team? Call in 315-443-2011. But Andrew, fun to see this SU women's squad pick up an NCAA tournament win after a pretty disappointing end of the regular season.
They had 12 days in between the Stanford loss and the ACC tournament to play now, and it really looked like a completely different team. Yes, the ACC is a gauntlet of a schedule. Syracuse probably played the toughest schedule in the country, but you got to give them a lot of credit. They came to play today. Emma Ward, 6 points, 3 goals, 3 assists, the catalyst of it all. But for them to really kind of set the tone in this NCAA tournament, it's really a team, Adam, that is in unfamiliar territory playing in this first round, right?
Yeah.
It's a program that's usually a top 3 seed that doesn't play in the first round, is usually at home in the Dome or at the SU soccer stadium sometimes. But really for them to kind of set the tone from the jump and not destroy Brown, but it was a comfortable victory throughout where the Bears really never got closer than 4 or 5.
Yeah, it was just so important for this team to, I think especially after they went down 2-1 and 3-2, to then just bounce back, end of the first quarter, start of the second, take a lead and not give it up. Because this team has really struggled recently, especially with just giving up really bad runs and going on horrible stretches, whether it was the entirety of that Boston College game to end the regular season where they lost 17-2, or the second half of the ACC tournament where they lost it 10-2. And so they went on these stretches that were just really, really bad, and you thought, oh man, they're down 3-2, like this could get bad. But then Syracuse goes on a 4-0 run, Brown scores 1, and then they go on another 3-0 run. So it's 7-1, and the Oranges, they outscore them, and they use that offensive might, 11 goals in the first half, and they didn't look back.
And I think the impressive thing, too, is the way, as you kind of put it, is the way they did turn things around. This was a team that was limping into the postseason. You lost 3 straight. You talk about the loss to BC. You scored 2 goals in that game, the least in all the program history for a team that's been to 2 or 3 national championships games that you're still trying to get over the hump of and win your first. But, your worst loss in 7 years as well in that BC game, you really just needed some sort of confidence. Maybe to even take a page out of the men's lacrosse book and play a little bit loose. Play like there's nothing else to play for. It's do or die lacrosse. And I felt like they did that in this game. And it was a huge step in the right direction when you do have a rematch coming on Sunday against Yale.
Yeah, and I think one of the more interesting things about this game is that we saw a couple of freshmen who didn't really play much at all this season get in like pretty early.
Important minutes
in an NCAA tournament game, which is like shocking. Bree Peters, who is a freshman local player from Baldwinsville, scores a goal pretty early in the game.
3 games in the regular
played
season.
in 1 game.
1 game.
In a blowout at Cal, and this is her 2nd game of the year, and it's like important minutes in the NCAA tournament. I think that it has to show, because there's not an injury reason that she's playing, that Kayla Trainer said, we have 12 days of practice, prove your spot on this team, and if you don't deserve to play, then you're not going to play, and someone else is going to take your spot. I mean, I think that, there's a true understanding of, they had to improve, and they did, and, as you said, they looked a lot looser, but they just looked like a different team overall, and different players out there.
I think the best thing that really happened to this team was losing early in that ACC tournament, because then, Adam, you're looking at 1 to 2 weeks of full preparation. Now, you can look at a bigger picture and say, they didn't even know they were going to make the NCAA tournament. Like, they were like one of the last teams in alongside Brown. I still look at that as a way of Kayla Trainer using that first week, and she said this before the game today, using that first week of practice, just to refocus yourself. Get back to who you are as a team overall and focusing on yourself. Then using that second week to focus on Brown and your opponent. I think that first week of reflection for this team was probably the most important 7 days of their entire season, where they didn't have to worry about a top 5 team, a top 10 team, going on the road, hosting them. They could just focus on getting better. And I really think players like Izzy Leja, who finished with 3 ground balls today, Ashley Volpe, a sophomore who tore ACL a season ago, she had 2 goals today. And as you mentioned, in Bree Peters, this was a time that Syracuse took to look themselves in the mirror and say, what do we have to do better? And even players earning more player time. That's fantastic stuff, because late in the season, players are fatigued. But to bring in players that haven't seen a lot of playing time that are ready to go this season, I think it's huge for Kayla Trainer and her team.
Yeah, I think that it really can, make a difference to not just get a reality check, but as you said, to get a reality check and actually have to pay attention to it. Because even after you lose to Boston College 17-2, it's directly turning around and looking at the next game.
Mm-hmm.
After that ACC tournament loss, it's, man, you lose 17-2 to end the regular season, knocked out in the first round. Like, that's not a place you're used to being.
They finished 9-8 in the regular season.
Yeah, and so you have a full week to say, oh my gosh, like, we really have so many things that have to improve. And sometimes you need that. And this team got it. And, as we said, full props to them for, coming out and picking up a big win over a solid Brown team, not a great Brown team.
A team that you called underrated earlier in the season,
I did.
which is absolutely true.
I did think that this was an underrated team earlier in the year. Brown was like around 17-20 for a lot of the season. They had the same record as Yale. This was a month ago. They had the same record as Yale. Beat Yale, but were 10 spots below them in the rankings. So they were definitely a little bit underrated throughout the season. But, they're not a great team, but still, it's an important win because, I mean, we saw Syracuse lose to an Ivy League team earlier in the season when they played Yale, who they'll play next. So, this was a losable game. Again, Brown beat Yale. I just said that. So it was an important one to just get a win.
I really think the draw of the bracket 2 really helped out Syracuse.
Oh, it's an easy draw. It's the easiest draw possible, I think.
The fact that they're not in Gainesville right now, taking on 3-seeded Florida, or even at 2-seed Boston College.
That would have been a disaster.
I mean, they potentially could play them in the quarterfinals coming up next week. But the draw that you got in this bracket, I think is really favorable, where you only have to play Brown. And again, that's a winnable game on Sunday against Yale that you didn't play too great against earlier in the season. It's a massive bounce back because, again, you look at the teams they could have played here in this mini quadrant of the first and second round and said, this team could have easily been done by just getting into the playoffs alone. But now to have a chance to get to the quarterfinals off a year, you had 1 win over 500 in the regular season, I really think you take that any day of the week.
If you can, as a program, in a year like this, still make it to the quarterfinals, that
shows still irrelevant and important.
Yeah, it's so impressive. That's like Kansas basketball, not missing a tournament for 50 years. It's one of those streaks of like, it just shows even when you're bad, you're still good enough to be relevant. And I think that there's building blocks off of that too. Of this is a young team. This is a team that's going to be probably mostly back next year. So if they can win 2 tournament games, then they have experience, and experience is so important. At home, how important do you think it would be if Syracuse women's lacrosse can win another game and make it to the quarterfinals after an awful season? Call in 315-443-2011. Because Andrew, it's just I think it'd be insurmountable for this program to just prove that no matter what, even when things are as bad as they can be, you can still make it to the quarterfinal.
It's funny. I look at the parallels between even the last conversation we had about men's lacrosse, where if you don't win a game in the NCAA tournament, I mean, you're like Gary Gate, his job might be on the hot seat, right? But even in a year where Syracuse still struggles, if you still win 2 NCAA tournament games, that still looks great for Kayla Trainer, a year where it wasn't all sunshine and roses. Like, there were some pretty bad losses this year. I mean, Clemson I wouldn't consider an awful loss. It's a tournament team. But still, at the time, that's not a great Tigers program that's only in their 3rd year of existence. Mm-hmm. So there's many victories you can still take out of this season. Beating Brown in the first round is not a massive one. But if you take down Yale, a top 10 seed on the road after you already lost to them earlier in the year, that's fantastic progress for a year that should not have gone the way you thought it would have.
Yeah, at this point, we have to accept the fact that this is not a Final Four team.
No, absolutely not.
They've done absolutely nothing to prove that they even could be. 17-2 to Boston College, which really all you have to say. But the other one is 16-8 against North Carolina, the other big national title contender.
That's your national championship right there, is UNC and BC.
It'll be those 2 teams without a doubt. So we know this year, unlike past years, they're not contenders. So just make it there and, then try and rebuild. But it does show just, how much more really does have to be done because, I mean, my goodness, this is a unbelievable disparity in talent from the top 2 to everyone else. And women's lacrosse has always been very guilty in the fact that you kind of know it's going to be one of these few at the start of the season. But, I mean, this year it's worse than ever it's going to be one of these 2 and there's no chance. And so for Syracuse, it's just trying to get back to that point. And if you can be a consistent quarterfinal team, then it's closer to getting back to that point.
It's really North Carolina, BC. That's it. Maybe you could throw Florida in that conversation.
Not this year, though. I don't think.
But those are your 2 top dogs, in the Tar Heels and the Eagles, and that'll most likely be your national championship. I also kind of look at this as a year 2 for development as well, Adam. I look at a player like Daniela Guyette, who, again, same questions as like Jimmy McCool had going into this year is, could she take over the number 1 spot of someone like a Schweitzer, who they had last year, who was one of the top goalies in her 3-4 years here at Syracuse? These last couple of games, my opinion on her has really changed of what can she be? Can she be someone like a Daniela Schweitzer who can take a game over, but not really? 2 saves today against Brown, 11 shots, and not a fantastic Brown offense. Had a long stretch against BC where she didn't even record a save. I think she finished with a 20 save percent. If you can't get it done against great teams or even okay teams, how far are you going to take this program in the long run?
Yeah, and I think that's what this tests, and that's what makes college sports so confusing now, because if Kayla Trainer decides, I don't think that this is cutting it, especially in goal potential with Danny Guyette. They can look to the portal and get someone new.
That's the great
thing.
So
that's why these games are still, it's probably the road will come to an end the week after against Boston College if you win, but you get to figure out what you really have with your team, and if you think that you need to be a lot better, because if this team can't make the quarterfinal, I don't think that there's a great freshman class coming in. You got to look back at the team you have and say, this really has to be a lot better. And if you can at least make the quarterfinal, then you prove maybe you're not as far off as you think. These 2 teams are just so good, you're at least in that next tier. If you don't even make it to the quarterfinal, you're not in that next tier. But if they are, then I think that that's so big. But overall, what this all leads to, as we've been saying, is this quarterfinal game, Syracuse against Yale. on Sunday at 2 p.m. They've already played each other once this season. Yale won that game 13-10. Kind of a similar question here. We'll end things before we take our final break, Andrew. I mean, do you think that this is a game that Syracuse goes into thinking, this is a game that we should win?
Yeah.
Even though they lost the last time, this is a game they think they should win?
I look at this as, from an experience standpoint as well, a program that's been there, hasn't really done it. I mean, you're still looking for that first natty. But at the same time, you look at prowess of what Syracuse has been over the last couple of years. Of course, that conversation hasn't been the same this year. I still look at this as a winnable second-round game that, like I said earlier, probably isn't the case in seeds 1 through 6. That I really think you got lucky in terms of playing a team you have already seen before in a game that was relatively close in a tough little. I think it was a weekday game as well on like a Tuesday, on a
Wednesday at 1
Tuesday
p.m.
or Wednesday in New Haven, like
before they flew out to California.
Like, come on.
Yeah, I mean, hey, it's not too, I think, dissimilar from your Boston Celtics, right? You're down 2-0, things aren't looking great,
but it's still
you're
confident.
still confident going against the New York Knicks.
It's a good analogy.
Experience is everything. Experience is so important. They're not down 2-0, but things haven't been great. I think going into Game 3, going into this Game 2 of the season, it makes sense. But we've got one final break to hit before we end up here on Sports Night. We end at 9 o'clock when we come back, talking the end of the transfer portal for SU men's and women's basketball. Don't go anywhere. Sports Night rolls on when we come back.
He was once a loud skeptic of cryptocurrency, but now the president is one of the industry's biggest cheerleaders. Trump's team wants to bring digital finance into the mainstream, but how much is he and his family already profiting directly from crypto? We'll flip that coin next time on 1A.
Weekdays from 10 to noon on 88.3 WAER and streaming live on WAER.org.
An election is underway in Washington, D.C. for the D.C. Bar Association.
I've been a member of the D.C. Bar for 30 years. And this is the first time that the election has generated this kind of interest.
This time, the brother of Attorney General Pam Bondi is one of the candidates. What would he want to do with an organization that many conservatives criticize? On the next Morning Edition from NPR News.
Weekdays from 5 to 9 on 88.3 WAER.
Hey there, WAER listeners. Want to stay in the loop with all the latest news, behind-the-scenes moments, and exclusive content? Follow us on social media. Find us on Facebook, Instagram, X, and TikTok for the stories you won't hear anywhere else. From breaking news to fun, interactive posts, it's all happening online. Don't miss out. Hit that follow button and be a part of the conversation with WAER.
Wrapping up shop here on Sports Night up until 9 o'clock. Got about 12 minutes left in our program. Welcome back alongside Adam Gotkin. I'm Andrew Delapiano. We've hit on some lacrosse, men's, women's, but now it's time to take our talents to the hardwood because, Adam, it's the end of school. We just had last exams on Tuesday. So I think it's time to hang out some report cards. Does that sound fair?
Oh, yeah.
I don't want to see your report card, but
I'm good.
I think for Syracuse men's basketball and Syracuse women's basketball.
I don't know if you want to see their report cards either, to be honest.
Really? You think they're that bad?
Yeah.
All right, let's dive into it. Starting with the men's side. I'll turn to you first. We've got 3 categories: high school recruiting, portal commits, portal exits. Where do you want to start with your first point?
Let's start with high school recruiting.
All right,
I think
let's
that
go.
makes the most sense because the other two are connected.
Yeah.
So my grade for high school recruiting, I'm going to give a B for this class. It's going to end up being a decent one. I think you have 2 4-stars middle of the pack with Sadiq White and Kyan Anthony, and then you got Aaron Womack, who I think is kind of a throwaway 3-star, and Luke Fennell, who is a project point guard, athletic, potentially could be something out of Australia. But, Kyan was a lob slam dunk. His dad's the best player in this program's history. Sadiq White, I think, is probably going to be a pretty good defender. I think that the offensive part of his game, especially on the perimeter, is going to be a big issue early on. So, this isn't a freshman class that you look at and think is going to, change the world. So because of that, I'm looking at a B. It is what it is. Kyan was a slam dunk, and Sadiq is what Syracuse should get.
Yeah, I'm not saying they're going to change the world, but I think they're going to make a significant impact on this program. And I'm going to go with A for high school recruiting, only on the basis that in what world should Kyan Anthony and Sadiq White be coming to this program after the year this team just had, right?
Well, again, they were committed before this year. One of them is the son of the best player that this program has ever seen, and the other is, I think if you get a guy to commit and believe, he's not necessarily going to decommit after 1 year because your excuses, you get Donnie Freeman and J.J. Starling to stay. You can use that same convincing for Sadiq White, who obviously believes in this coaching staff, and the brand is still a thing. Like I think that it's a slam dunk.
Dying. Well, if it's a slam dunk, then you're only going B then?
Yeah, because it was a slam dunk. Kyan was an obvious commit.
Yeah.
Like that's if they got two decently ranked 4 stars, and neither of them was the son of a legend, okay, it's different. I'm not counting Kyan and what this coaching staff went out and did. If they didn't get him, then it automatically would have been like a D, just for the fact that you couldn't bring in Carmelo's kid.
Of course, yeah.
So because
you're already looking at him as a
shoo-in,
okay.
So it's what else? And
okay.
I think Aaron Womack. I don't, from what I've read about him and the scouts that I've heard talk about him, maybe not a Power 5 player. Luke Fennell again might be something. You don't know. And Sadiq White I don't think is a complete player that can play 25, 30 minutes yet. So because of that, I'm a B.
I still look at them in the rankings. They're top 10, and I think they can make a splash.
Where are they top 10?
On 3 or 24/7 Sports says this is a top 10
recruiting
class.
Not anymore.
What are they? Oh, sorry, 15 now, 14?
I'm looking at 26.
26?
Yeah.
I don't think that's true.
That's what I'm looking at right
All
now.
right, maybe I'm looking at football. Either way, let's talk portal.
Oh,
exits, commits.
I think we do exits first.
Okay, go ahead.
So exits, I'm looking at an A. I said this before, get everyone out.
Just getting rid of it.
Worst season, you don't need to, no one has to stay. Goodbye, everyone. It's that simple. Everyone could leave. It's an A.
I'm kind of on the same page. I'll go B+ here because, look at who you lost. Peter Majstorovic, Kyle Cuff.
Well, I would. Yeah, that's because I was thinking. Technically the other guys enter the portal, but they don't have eligibility.
Oh, of course,
your guys,
yes. Yes.
With eligibility back, yeah, Majstorovic, Cuff.
You're not losing a whole lot there.
Chris Bell.
Oh, Chris Bell, he's in Cali. He's back home now.
It wasn't working, so I'm perfectly fine that they left. I think we're so. What do I have an A. You have a B. A B+. You said.
Yeah, and with the guys coming in. I really thought this was a solid class. The biggest get for me was Nate George. You finally get a point guard back in the mix that is hopefully a lot better than Jaquan Carlos. George led the ACC in assists per game last year at 6.5. He could be a huge turning point in this program. Nate King's a guy that can shoot decently well.
I would say he can shoot great, but that's all he can do.
Well, that's what you need sometimes. You just need a sharpshooter. You need a better version of what Chris Bell should have been.
Okay, so I guess we'll give your ranking first, and then I'll kind of get into
All right,
that.
I'm going with a B for the guys coming in out of the portal.
Okay, I'm going with a C-.
C-?
I think that because I think they needed 3 starting caliber players out of the portal. You brought back 2 guys. I don't think anyone really wants to see Kyan or Sadiq start. You brought back 2 guys.
Kyan can start right away.
No way.
Really?
No way Kyan Anthony is starting. Have you watched him play? He's not good enough defensively. He's not good enough shooter. He's not good enough playing. No, there's 0% chance Kyan can start right away. I was looking at, you're looking for 3 starters. They got 1. They got the point guard. That's all. I think that Nate Kings has the potential to maybe be something as a shooter. I don't love him enough defensively and as a playmaker. William Kyle as your center, I think, is a big risk. He's athletic, but I don't know. And
guy
then
can jump out the gym at least.
Ibrahim Swari you get from Georgia Tech because he's Kings' friend. can't expect anything from him. Bryce Zephyr, whatever.
Don't get me started.
I don't
on
even
him.
care about his name because he was the worst-rated defender on Montana State. And then you get Tyler Betsy from Cincinnati, former 4-star, great recruit, didn't do anything at Cincinnati. So I think you were looking for 3 starters, and you got 1 with some questions who might be better, which is why I'm, a C-. C's get degrees, but I think overall still got to be a step up from that.
All right. 5 minutes left of our program. Let's turn to the women's side. We'll also start with high school recruiting. Only 2 in this year's class for Syracuse. Where are you ranking that?
Well, my standards are definitely lower when it comes to women's basketball compared to men's, just historically. Syracuse men's basketball, great every year. Women's basketball have had some good years, but not great ones. Felicia Leggett-Jack has got another top 100 player coming in this year in Jasmine Cooper, 6'1" wing from Massachusetts.
Excited about her.
4-star. And then Camden Nelson, who was the Gatorade Player of the Year in Connecticut. I think those are 2 really solid.
There's your point guard.
Your point guard and a wing, athletic, Northeast players. I'm giving them a B. I think that's a really solid class. For Syracuse, that's all you can ask for. 2 really solid Northeast talented players.
I'm tailing back a little bit and going to go C+ here, where I think you still had the potential to branch out a little bit more and maybe get some more talent. I think just 2 to 3 players a recruiting class is not. Now, I'm not always someone that's looking at quantity over quality, but still at the same time, I think maybe you could have thrown in your hat at least a little bit at some other talent at least.
I'm actually going to say that this is why my next grade is so bad. I think that they were fine by not bringing in a lot of freshmen because I think that they needed to bring in significant players from the portal, experienced players in the portal, which they did not, which is why I'm giving Felicia Leggett-Jack's team a D for what they've got in the portal. Apologies for pronunciation. Layla Felia, I believe.
Correct.
Still getting this right. Felia.
Yes.
On Texas. Last year was on Texas. Played in only 8 games and averaged, 6 points?
Yeah.
She was good at Michigan before that, but last year wasn't very good. Aurora Almond coming in from Miami. Didn't do anything significant for the Hurricanes last year. You have Donovan Darius, who redshirted, didn't even play at USC last year. And then Oyindamola Akimboala.
Let's say it together. Owindamola
Akimboala.
There you go.
Felicia Leggett-Jack not making it easy on us broadcasters this season. Some tough names, but Akimboala, 3 points a game last year at Auburn. Did not get players who have a history of doing anything at this level, and because of that, I think that makes you a little bit worried.
Yeah, I agree with you on that sense. I'm going C+ for the portal commits. I think you hit the nail right on the head there, where the offensive production, you already lost a lot from even 2 years ago with Deasia Fair, even just this year with Georgia Woolley, and now your starting point guard Dominique Camp and even Isabel Verajao being gone. You didn't fill the voids offensively that you were looking for, and that's kind of what you needed to do this offseason. Felicia Leggett-Jack said it again and again, that this team was going to be hungry and heavy in the portal. I really don't feel like she did that, and hopefully I'm proven wrong, but you don't want to see another season where Syracuse just kind of drops off in the middle and barely gets into the ACC tournament and then eliminated first round by BC. It's a long uphill battle for the Orange.
Yeah, I think it is. Last year's record did not surprise me after what they did in the portal last year. Very similar thing. You bring in Angelica Velez, Journey Thompson from LSU, Arizona State, but they're 2 players who didn't really do much there, and then they came here, took bigger roles, and didn't do much with those roles. So you're open for a lot, but you know what?
That's a long time away.
I was going to say that's all we can do.
Okay.
Hope.
Well, all we can do is hope, and that's also a long time away in October, November. Well, let's turn our attention to Sunday. Number 6 Syracuse men's lacrosse, Harvard. First round of the ACC tournament. Game time, 5 o'clock. Countdown to face-off. McClure remodeling countdown to face-off, that is, at 4:30. Double overtime follows with Nathaniel Cunningham and myself up until 8:30 here on WAER Syracuse. A couple of thank yous to hand out. Our producer, John Baccio. Our engineer, as you heard early in the show, Max Gifford. And our do-it-all WAER desk member, Josh Richardson, pulling all the strings to make this show happen. Thanks so much, my friend, for taking care of business behind the scenes, and good luck to your Cleveland Cavaliers tonight. But that'll do it here on WAER. For our entire crew here at Ostrom Avenue, I'm Andrew Del Piana, Adam Gawkins saying so long, and good night, Syracuse.